There are moments in life that seem so ordinary, so peaceful, they almost feel sacred. A quiet park, a girl in a blue dress, a summer breeze playing in the trees. And then, something happens that rips through that peace like a scream in a cathedral. That girl's name was Imani Roberts. She was 26 years old, sharp-witted, poised, the kind of young woman who radiated quiet strength. Her natural curls were tied loosely at the back, framing a face marked by intelligence and grace. On that particular Sunday afternoon, she was sitting on a bench beneath a maple tree in Lincoln Park, a book open on her lap and a soft smile playing at the corners of her lips. If you'd passed her, you might have just thought, what a beautiful day, what a peaceful scene. But you wouldn't have known the fire burning beneath that calm surface. Imani wasn't just another pretty face in the park, she was the executive director of Empower Forward, a nonprofit she co-founded to fight for the rights of women in marginalized communities. She was a speaker at rallies, a writer for civic papers, and a regular presence at city council meetings. She didn't carry power in her wallet, she carried it in her voice, in her eyes, in her purpose. But even the fiercest woman needs quiet. That day she'd come to the park not as an activist, not as a leader, just as a daughter, a thinker, a woman who needed air. The kind of stillness that only nature and a good book can provide. She wore a soft, sky-pure maxi dress with short sleeves and a flowing hem that reached her ankles. It had been a birthday gift from her father, a man who, though powerful, still made time to pick out thoughtful presents for his only child. And that man? His name was Raymond Roberts, the mayor of Chicago. But none of that mattered in the next moment. The first sound that broke her peace wasn't a bird or a breeze. It was a voice. "Hey, sweetheart," it called out, laced with sarcasm. "That's a nice dress. Mind showing it off a little more?" Imani's eyes lifted from her book, narrowing slightly against the sunlight, and against something much colder. Two uniformed officers were walking toward her. One was older, stocky, with a smirk that didn't belong in a public park. His badge read, K. Maddox. The other, younger and leaner, seemed to hesitate behind him. His name tag read, T. Grayson. Imani felt it immediately, that twinge in the gut, that instinct that told you something was wrong, even before your brain caught up. She closed her book slowly and placed it beside her. Her breath stilled. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice firm but calm. It was a voice that had testified before city boards, that had silenced crowds with logic and compassion. But Maddox didn't care about that voice. He wasn't listening. "Oh, nothing," he said, grinning. "Just wanted to peek under that pretty little dress of yours." Grayson chuckled nervously behind him. Maddox stepped forward. That was the moment something shifted. The sun didn't shine the same. The air felt thick. Imani's dignity, so carefully carried, so tightly wrapped, was under siege. Before she could move or respond or demand answers, Maddox acted. With a practiced flick of his patrol baton, he hooked the edge of her dress and lifted it. High. Far too high. Gasps echoed from a nearby path. A child dropped his ice cream. A jogger stumbled to a stop. And there she stood, frozen. Not by fear, but by the cold hand of violation. The blue linen fabric billowed. Her thigh was exposed. Her underwear, lace, white, innocent, was suddenly a spectacle. Laughter. Sickening. From two men who wore the badge of law. Imani screamed. It wasn't just a sound of panic. It was fury, betrayal, heartbreak. She yanked her dress down with trembling hands, her chest heaving, her face burning not just with shame, but with rage. "What is wrong with you?" she shouted, eyes blazing. "You don't get to do this to me." Or to anyone. But Maddox only smirked, his tone oily. "Oh, lighten up, it was just a little joke. Don't be so uptight." And that was it. The joke. That was what they thought her body was, her pain, her privacy, a punchline. But Imani Roberts wasn't just another girl in the park. She was the wrong woman to mess with. For a few seconds, time stood still. Imani's scream had pierced the park like a siren, yet the world around her barely stirred. A few heads turned. A couple walking a dog paused, unsure if they'd misheard. But most people looked away, pretended it wasn't happening, as if her humiliation was a private matter. Officer Maddox stepped back, baton now resting casually at his side. His eyes, however, were anything but casual, predatory, amused, soaked in a smugness that made Imani's skin crawl. Grayson, the younger officer, chuckled nervously and kicked at the dirt, clearly uncomfortable, but not enough to stop anything. "You're crazy," Imani growled, still holding her dress tightly against her body. Her voice wavered, but her feet didn't move. "You assaulted me. You humiliated me." "Right here, in public," Maddox snorted. "Assault? That's a big word, sweetheart. What, you a lawyer or something?" "No," she said, her tone sharpening. "But I know my rights." He took a slow step forward, invading her space again. "Well, here's the thing," he said, voice dropping. "We're the ones who enforce your rights." There it was. The power. Not just spoken, but flaunted, as if the uniform gave him permission to degrade, as if the badge was a shield against consequence. Imani's heart pounded so loud she could feel it in her ears, but she didn't step back. Not an inch. "You think you can do whatever you want because you're in uniform?" she asked. "You think I'm just going to stay silent and walk away?" Maddox shrugged. "Usually they do." "They?" "Girls like you." There was no ambiguity in his words. It wasn't about policing. It wasn't about law and order. It was about power. About reminding her where she stood in his mind, beneath him. Behind Maddox, Officer Grayson looked away. He didn't say a word. But silence, in moments like these, is complicity. Imani scanned the park. There were people now. A small group had gathered at a distance, wary eyes, hushed murmurs. But no one stepped forward. No one intervened. The same people who might repost hashtags about justice and equality stood frozen, unsure. And in that moment, Imani felt what so many women feel, what so many black women feel. Alone. She had spoken at marches, sat across from city officials, led workshops on accountability. But now, stripped of title, of armor, of audience, she was just another black girl being harassed in public. Still, there was one thing Maddox didn't understand. Imani didn't break. She burned. "I'm reporting this," she said flatly, pulling her phone from her shoulder bag. Maddox smirked. "Go ahead. Report it. You think Internal Affairs gives a damn? They'll take our word over yours." Imani stared at him. "Do you even know who I am?" "Oh, we don't play that game," Maddox replied, grinning wider. "Doesn't matter if you're someone's niece or some TikTok star. Out here, we're the law." Grayson finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "Kyle, maybe we should go? This is going too far." Maddox turned to him, eyes narrow. "You scared, rookie? You worried this little princess is going to get you fired?" "She's not just some girl," Grayson muttered. "She looks familiar." Imani took a slow breath, not out of fear, out of strategy. Then, quietly but firmly, she said the words that changed everything. "I'm the daughter of Mayor Raymond Roberts." The silence was deafening. Maddox blinked. For the first time since the encounter began, the confidence on his face faltered. Just slightly, Grayson turned pale. His mouth parted like he wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. Imani locked eyes with Maddox. "You just sexually harassed the daughter of the man who appointed your police chief," she said. "In broad daylight, with witnesses. And you laughed about it." She raised her phone slowly, dialed, and pressed it to her ear. Maddox tried to puff up again. "Who are you calling?" "My father?" The call connected. One ring. Two. Maddox reached out toward her, suddenly unsure. "You don't need to. Let's not blow this out of..." 3 rings. Then a voice answered. "Imani? Everything okay?" "Dad," she said, voice steady, calm, and filled with steel. "I'm at Lincoln Park. 2 officers just assaulted me. They lifted my dress in public." On the other end of the line, silence. Then a low, steady voice responded. "Stay right there. Don't let them leave. I'm handling it." She hung up and looked at the 2 men in front of her. "You should probably stay put," she said. Maddox, suddenly pale, opened his mouth, but no words came out. Grayson looked like he might be sick, and for the first time since this began, Imani allowed herself a breath. Not because she was saved, but because justice was finally catching up. The weight of her words still hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. "I'm the daughter of Mayor Raymond Roberts." Kyle Maddox stood stiff as stone, the color drained from his face. A moment ago he was laughing, taunting, sure of his untouchable position behind the badge. Now, he was pale, sweat beginning to form at his brow. The smug smirk that once sat comfortably on his lips had vanished without a trace. Tyrone Grayson, the younger officer, looked absolutely crushed. His posture slumped, hands trembling slightly at his sides. His eyes darted from Imani to Maddox and back again, as if searching for a way out of the mess that had just detonated around them. Imani didn't say anything else. She simply stood there, phone still warm in her hand, her gaze fixed and unwavering. She didn't need to scream anymore. Her silence was louder than any cry for help. Minutes passed like hours. The small crowd that had been forming nearby began to grow. People whispered. A few pulled out their phones, cautiously recording the scene from a distance. Something was happening, and the air was thick with it. Then, another phone rang. Not Imani's, Maddox's. The sound startled him. He fumbled with it, pulling it from his belt. He stared at the caller ID. City Hall, it read. His hand trembled. He hesitated. Too long. Answer it, Imani said, her voice sharp. That's your boss. He pressed the green button and lifted the phone to his ear. This is Officer Maddox. The voice on the other end cut him off. It was cold, precise, deadly serious. My daughter's about to be punished with seizures and intimidation to complete the adjudication in history. You have any idea how devastating this is to the city? This is Mayor Raymond Roberts. You have 10 seconds to explain why my daughter just called me in tears, telling me you put your hands on her in a public park, Maddox stammered. Mr. Mayor, there's been a misunderstanding. I don't want excuses, Mayor Roberts growled. I want your name, your badge number, and your location. Now. Maddox's mouth moved, but for once he was speechless. He turned the phone toward Imani like it burned his hand. He wants to talk to you, he muttered, voice cracking. Imani didn't take it. She folded her arms. You started this, she said. Now finish it. Reluctantly, Maddox brought the phone back to his ear. I'm at Lincoln Park, South Fountain area, badge 618. My partner's here too, Grayson, badge 472. Mayor Roberts paused. Then came the quiet thunder in his tone. You're not to move. You're not to touch another civilian. You're not even to blink in my daughter's direction. Internal Affairs and Deputy Chief Owens are en route. Surrender your badge, your firearm, and your baton the moment they are— Yes, sir, Maddox said, barely above a whisper. The call ended. Maddox lowered the phone like a man walking away from his own grave. Around them, the murmuring crowd had become bolder. A woman in a business suit stepped forward. I saw what happened, she said firmly. You assaulted her. You lifted her skirt with your baton. That's sexual misconduct. A retired prof-looking man with a small dog joined in. You should be ashamed of yourselves. This is disgusting. She should sue the city. Maddox didn't reply. He couldn't. He just stood there, frozen. Grayson, meanwhile, was shaking his head, his voice cracking as he tried to speak to Imani. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I just followed his lead. I didn't touch you, I swear. Imani looked at him, calm but cold. And that's supposed to make it better? Grayson opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His shoulders dropped. Moments later, 2 black SUVs pulled up on the park's service road. From them emerged Deputy Chief Owens, a no-nonsense black woman in a sharp navy suit, and 2 internal affairs investigators with clipboards and tight expressions. They moved quickly, with practiced authority. Imani Roberts? Owens asked, approaching respectfully. I'm Deputy Chief Cynthia Owens. I'm here on behalf of Chief Miller and your father. Imani nodded. We're deeply sorry. Are you physically okay? I'm fine, she said. But I'm not here to feel sorry for. I'm here to see accountability. Owens nodded, her eyes full of professional empathy. You'll get it. She turned to Maddox and Grayson. You two, badges, now. Maddox hesitated. Now, Officer Maddox. He removed the badge slowly, then his firearm and baton, placing them in a plastic evidence bag provided by the investigator. Grayson followed suit, hands trembling. Both men were led to the side where they were separated and read their rights. The crowd clapped. Low at first, then louder. Some cried. Some shouted Imani's name, but she didn't soak in the attention. She just stood still. This wasn't victory. Not yet. This was justice beginning its work. And as the sun began to dip behind the trees, casting long shadows across the park, Imani Roberts stood in the center of it all. Not as a victim, but as a force. A reminder that when power is abused, truth speaks louder. 3 hours later, City Hall was in chaos. The incident at Lincoln Park had reached the mayor's office long before the official report. News of what happened to Imani Roberts had traveled like wildfire. Text messages, social media posts, even live recordings from shocked park-goers were already circulating. The video of Officer Maddox lifting Imani's dress had gone viral before the sun even set. Inside the mayor's private conference room, Raymond Roberts sat motionless, his hands folded in front of him, jaw clenched tight. Rose across from him, Police Chief Darrell Miller, his most trusted appointment, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, struggling to find the right words. "I don't know what to say, sir," Miller finally said. "I'm ashamed. This happened on my watch." The mayor didn't answer right away. When he finally did, his voice was calm but unshakably firm. "Shame isn't enough," he said. "Accountability is. I want full disciplinary hearings within 24 hours. No union delay tactics, no procedural hiding. This doesn't go away quietly." Chief Miller nodded. "It won't. I've already suspended both officers without pay. I've assigned Deputy Chief Owens to lead a full investigation." The mayor tapped his fingers once on the table. "I want permanent terminations, and I want them to face criminal charges. Sexual misconduct under color of law, civil rights violations, abuse of authority, everything. And the press? I'll address the press myself." The next morning, the city woke up to a live broadcast. Mayor Raymond Roberts, somber and proud, stood behind the podium at City Hall, flanked by Chief Miller and Imani herself. He didn't read from a script. He didn't spin. He spoke from the deepest part of his being. As a mayor, yes, but more importantly, as a father. "What happened in Lincoln Park was not just an act of misconduct," he began. "It was an act of violence. It was an act of humiliation inflicted upon a young woman who did nothing but sit in a park and exist in her skin." His voice tightened. "That young woman happens to be my daughter. But even if she weren't, this would be equally unacceptable, because no woman, black or white, rich or poor, deserves to be reduced to a joke by the very people sworn to protect her." He looked directly into the camera. "Let this be clear. Any officer, any public servant, any person in power who believes they can intimidate, harass, or violate another human being because they think no one's watching should know this: we are watching now." Officer Kyle Maddox and Officer Tyrone Grayson were both fired permanently within 36 hours. Maddox was later charged with official misconduct and sexual battery under state law. Grayson, though not physically involved, was charged with complicity, having enabled the act and failed to report it. Their names were stripped from the honor roll, their records marked with disgrace, their careers over. But for Imani Roberts, the real victory wasn't watching them fall. It was watching the system finally look inward. Over the following weeks, Mayor Roberts enacted a full overhaul of the city's Community Oversight Board. He introduced mandatory racial bias training, a zero-tolerance harassment policy, and implemented a new policy. All Park Patrol units were required to wear active body cams with cloud backups, without exception. More importantly, he launched a reform campaign titled Dignity First, aimed at restoring trust between law enforcement and the communities they served, especially women, especially people of color. Imani herself refused to fade quietly into the background. She returned to work at Empower Forward, where she launched a new initiative, Stand Witness, a community witness response network. The goal: encourage bystanders to safely intervene, record, and report injustices in public places. "I don't want what happened to me to become another headline and fade away," she told a local station. "I want it to be a warning shot. I want it to be the moment people finally understood that power must come with accountability." When asked if she forgave the officers, she paused for a long moment. "I don't owe them forgiveness," she said softly. "What I owe is the truth. The truth that this happens to women every day. The truth that if I hadn't been someone, I might been just another dismissed voice." That truth hit home with many. Thousands of messages poured in from across the country. Women shared stories. Activists called for action. Even officers from other departments reached out to express support and shame and the desire to do better. Because Imani's voice wasn't just the voice of a victim. It was the voice of every person who had ever been silenced, dismissed, or violated and told to get over it. 1 week later, Imani returned to Lincoln Park. She sat on the same bench, wearing the same blue dress. This time, not to escape, but to reclaim. A small crowd watched from a respectful distance. Her father stood quietly nearby, hands behind his back. She didn't make a speech. She didn't need to. She simply opened her book, crossed her legs, and read, as if to say, "You didn't break me. You don't get to write my story. I do." What would you have done if you were Imani that day? Do you believe the punishment they received was enough? Or should more be done when those with power betray it so deeply? Let us know in the comments. Your voice matters, especially when others try to silence it.